spoke about Zouk music early on in my first video and Kassav. So we're gonna read about Kassav a little bit. Kassav is a French Caribbean band that originated from Guadeloupe in 1979. Kassav is often credited with pioneering the Zouk musical genre. Their musical evolution is a synthesis of Calypso and compa traditions. So, here you go. Zouk was created by Kassav, and Kassav, I guess they took, Calypso and compa, and they kind of like develop on like the basis of those two musical genres, and they created Zouk. There's actually two types of Zouk. So let's go back to Zouk real quick. You have two types of Zouk, which is, one is called a Zouk Beton, and the other one is Zouk Love. Zouk Beton is kind of like a fast tempo, about like 120 to 145 BPM. It came from like the carnival traditions of Guadeloupe and Martinique, which is, so let's go back to Casa real quick. So up here, it says the band's musical style is rooted in the Guadeloupean Gwoka as well as the Martinique Tibois tradition. So that's kind of like those two musical genres is what laid the foundation for the Zouk Beton. But then you have another type of Zouk, which is called Zouk Love. The musicians from Martinique and Guadeloupe, they added MIDI instrumentation, which is like digital technology, to compa, and that developed into a genre called Zouk Love. The Haitians, they saw what the musicians from Martinique and Guadeloupe did to their compa, so they kind of like use a similar approach to modernize their compa, and that created what is called compa new generation. And as a result, Zouk Love is effectively the French Lesser Antilles compa, and it gradually became indistinguishable from compa. So like if you was to listen to compa right now and you was to listen to Zouk, it sounds almost the same. And that's because of this whole thing that happened. Because of that, Zouk kind of died out because like the Haitians, they took the Zouk Love and they kind of like used that influence to develop their compa, and now it's like indistinguishable. Like Zouk and Zouk and compa is like one genre now. So that kind of like killed Zouk. But prior to compa compa was always popular, but as far as like being modernized like it is now, it wasn't like this back then. Anyhow, Zouk had like a really major impact back in the 80s. As you know, Guadeloupe and Martinique is part of France, so there's a large diaspora of French Antilleans living in Paris, and they popularized Zouk. So like there are like two types of Zouk. Like there's like Zouk from the Caribbean, and there's Zouk in France. Like the Zouk in France became really popular in Africa because a lot of the countries in Africa actually speak French, so they they could understand the language, and that music became popular in Africa. And to tell you the truth, like if you listen to Afrobeat, a lot of the beats from Afrobeats actually have a little bit Zouk in there. So one of the main features of Zouk is this. So when you hear that, that's like Zouk right there. And back in Cuba, like this is called the cinquillo. This is like the main feature of Zouk. Like once you hear that over a drum beat, you just know that's Zouk. And I see the same thing happening in soca. I see the same thing happening in Afrobeat. But growing up, the only countries that was doing that was Martinique and Guadeloupe, and that became like the stamp for Zouk music. Like that was like the main feature right there. You know what I'm saying? That, and also they would use the hi-hat sometimes. They would use like the maracas sometimes. But that's Zouk right there. Like whether it's fast, whether it's slow, that was like the main feature of Zouk. But anyhow, Zouk is not as popular these days, but you can still hear Zouk in some styles of music in Africa, especially in Kizomba, which is from Angola, Kuduro. Zouk was really popular in the Cape Verde Islands, where it inspired the creation of Kola Zouk. You also have Cabo Love, and you also have Cabo Zouk, which all were influenced by Zouk Love. Zouk also had an influence on the creation of the Brazilian Zouk. So Brazilian Zouk is a really romantic type of Zouk that originated in Brazil. So just like I said, there are like two types of Zouk, right? They're like, you have Zouk Beton, which is fast, then you have Zouk Love, which is more slow, it's more romantic. And that romanticness is what inspired the Brazilians. So I guess back in the days, the Brazilians had something called lambada. But lambada was fast. So they started dancing lambada to Zouk, which is like really slow and romantic. And that evolved into what is called the Brazilian Zouk. Brazilian Zouk these days is not only dance over Zouk music anymore. They've been incorporating R&B, pop, hip hop, and like contemporary, but still, like the romanticness and the sexuality is still there. And I also heard that also had an impact on bachata sexual from the Dominican Republic as well. Like, if you don't know that, I could talk about that in a different topic, but not right now. But as you can see, Zouk had some impact around the world. Currently, it's not that popular. The music that's popular right now in the French Antilles is bouillon music.